Welcome to Face to Facts. I'm Nick Face. I'm sitting over in an opposite end today, but that's okay.
We're switching it up.
We're switching it up a little bit. We have Kevin Vent joining us here once again. And today we're going to be looking at the Patriots a little bit on how they've been doing so far this year, recapping a game from last week, and we're going to also talk about hashtag Deflategate.
Uh-oh.
Because we have that coming up this weekend too. So we'll try not to be as deflating as possible,
we'll try
and
to
we
stay
will
as
lead you
inflated as we possibly
through
can.
this wonderful discussion about the Patriots and the Cowboys, which are from this past weekend.
Absolutely.
Just an overall thoughts, first of all, on the game that we saw.
Well, obviously, the Patriots were dominant. I mean, there's no question
were.
about that. They won 30-6, so there's no question they were dominant. They allowed 2 field goals on defense. The defense was unbelievable.
Yep.
Obviously, they were kind of playing the reserves for the Cowboys. Romo wasn't in, Des Bryant wasn't in. But as typical, Bill Belichick's game planning for that team was perfect. On the defensive side. On the offensive side, it was a little different. Even though they scored 30 points, the first half was a little touch and go there.
What was 6-3 was the end, or 3-3, something like that at the halftime?
No. I don't remember what the halftime score was.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that the
yeah.
Cowboys sacked Brady 5 times in the first half.
That's right.
And they obviously had a very good, Jason Garrett and his team put together a really good game plan against the Patriots offense in the first half with Greg Hardy's return and that kind of thing. What they didn't do well, the Cowboys didn't do well, was adjust when the Patriots adjusted.
Right.
The Patriots adjusted. They moved Gronk to the other side to chip Greg Hardy on those rushes. They kept the running back in and did some plays to the other way and that kind of thing. And that kind of slowed and almost defeated, really, the Cowboys' pass rush. And the Cowboys did not compensate for that.
Were you surprised that they came out as slow as they were on offense?
A little.
Yeah,
I expected more out of him. I didn't expect Brady to get sacked 5 times.
No.
And so
they were hitting him hard too.
They were hitting him hard.
Especially Hardy.
He took more punishment in that game than he has this year in any other game thus far. And not even just with the sacks, but with the knockdowns and the hurries and all that kind of thing. The Cowboys line, defensive line, did a great job against the Patriots in the first half.
Yep.
And if you saw, Hardy just owned Nate Solder in that first half. Just walking around him like Solder's standing there. And
we'll talk about Solder a little bit later
there,
and maybe that's why.
Solder did not cover himself with glory in that game.
No, he did not. What was the spark that kind of started the engine for the Patriots?
Well, I do think the changing game plan. I think moving the play calling around a little bit, like I said, moving Gronk to the other side, got the offense going a little bit. And I honestly think that the spectacular play of the defense motivated the offense. Oftentimes on a football team, defense and offense can be seen as going as a opposition to each other, but they really, in a good team, will motivate each other. Because the offense will say...
They fed off each other.
They fed off, the offense will say, wow, that defense, they're playing their hearts out, they're doing great. We got to score them points. Because if the offense can put on long drives, then the defense doesn't have to play out there as long. Therefore, they play better in the end of the second half. And the defense does the same thing. Wow, the offense went out there and they scored us a touchdown. Let's go stop them this time. They feed off each other. And more than any other sport, football is an emotional sport.
Hugely.
And so I think really the play of the defense really sparked the offense in that game, along with the change of play.
I do have to say that going into this year, knowing that we're 4-0 and everything right now, who would have thought this defense would be as good as it is right now?
It is much better.
I'm shocked.
It is much better than I expected it to be. With the loss of Revis, with the loss of Browner, the loss of Vince Wilfork, just to name a couple, you really didn't expect them to be as good as they are. And they are better. I think the one area that they're not as good, though they did much better on Sunday, is in actually the pass rush.
Right.
It just seems like the pass rush still isn't there. No matter how many times we say we focus on it, Chandler Jones is good.
Almost had an interception on Sunday. Yeah.
He's a good pass rusher, but they don't put as much pressure on the quarterback as I wish they did.
Is this because the Patriots truly haven't been tested yet? What do you think on that answer?
Well, I think everyone was hyping the Bills game as being a big one, and the Patriots defense didn't do great in the second half, though I kind of think they didn't try as hard in the second half.
Yeah, they had a little bit of a letdown.
They had a little bit of letdown. I think they had a big lead and just kind of said, we're not going to push it. They didn't rush the quarterback in the second half of that Bills game really at all. They did 3-man and 4-man rushes. They didn't do any blitzes or anything like that in the second half of that Bills game. So they kind of let the Bills back into the game because they pretty much knew they had the game in hand. But other than that, you have to look at. I always look at these things as how do you evaluate the team, not now, but when the team was coming in. Opening night against the Steelers, everyone expected that to be a big game.
Yep.
You know, and the Steelers were expected at that time to be a contender, as they normally are.
Right.
No one predicted that Steelers weren't going to be as good this
No.
year as they have been in other seasons.
No.
So have they really been tested? Maybe not, but you can only judge it based on what people thought of the team at the time.
It's true.
And at the time, the Steelers were considered a great team, you know, to test them. And at the time,
Mm-hmm.
the Bills game was considered to be a big one. Jacksonville, yeah, you expected the Patriots to romp in the Jacksonville game.
Yeah.
And because of the lack of having all the starters in there and the Cowboys, you really expected the Patriots to win this one.
What are your thoughts on a bye so early in the season? I was just thinking about that.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
First of all, you just get psyched, as a fan, you just get psyched for your season.
You do.
And you're in the fourth week of the season, and
Right.
you don't have a home game, and you're like, oh, what do you do today? You know, where sometimes when it's closer to the middle of the season for
Yep.
you, in some ways as a fan, you kind of appreciate the break. Oh, hey, a day where I can do whatever I want and I don't have to watch football.
Right. But now with fantasy, of course, that's not true.
Fantasy, that's not true. But I think for the teams, I think generally the teams will never say this, but the teams like it better halfway through the season. It makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, give
Than
you
so
a
early.
break halfway. You know, oftentimes you're healing guys up and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Early in the season is tough, but if you look at, we talked about this in the last episode, if you look at the Patriots' schedule, it's really the only tough thing about the Patriots' schedule this year is that the bye was early.
Yeah.
The Patriots' schedule is not a tough one this year, so I
No,
don't think
it's
they're
not.
going to be affected by the early bye as much as other teams might be.
No, it really won't. Player Tom Brady, we talked about how he was rushed and sacked and hit a lot of the times in that first half.
Yep.
After that, he makes his adjustment and really starts to click
Yeah.
with his receivers and the running game and all sorts of
Yeah.
things there. Judge his overall play. How was he on a whole for the game?
Well, I mean, he had 20 for 27
Yep.
in the game and a pass for 275 yards, over 10 yards per pass play, which is excellent. You know, he threw for 2 touchdown passes.
Yep.
What more do you want out of the guy? I think he
Rushed
had
for one.
Rushed for one.
Yeah.
He had a 130 quarterback rating or something
Yeah.
like that, passer rating. You know, really, what more do you want out of the guy? You know, for the game. So I think, you know,
Dallas would have liked him.
Dallas would have loved to have him in that game. You know, so I think he did well. I mean, I think, you know, it's not a typical pass for 400 yards Tom Brady game that we love to see, but that's okay. The Patriots are actually a better balanced team this year.
It was almost like they won in a different style
Yeah.
on Sunday. It wasn't more of that in-your-face kind of win, which will happen on Sunday. Well, we'll get to that in
We'll
a
get to
second.
that in a minute.
I thought it was more a respectable kind of win,
Yeah.
more of a, a conservative approach.
This is what I look at. Look at the number of teams. I'm going to take the St. Louis Rams this year as an example. They get up for the big opponents. They beat Seattle. They beat Arizona. But then they kind of go down for the lesser opponents and they lose to them.
Yep.
Sunday's game was the kind of game where the Patriots could have said they don't have Romo, they don't have Des Bryant.
Who cares?
Greg Beatty's just coming back.
Yeah.
You know, and they're not very good. We can just kind of do what we want and not try as hard. And they didn't do that.
No.
You know, even though the first half looked rough, it wasn't because of lack of preparation or trying. It was a couple of wrinkles that the Cowboys had that they weren't expecting.
Right.
And they adjusted to it. It did not look like a team that was just laying down for a team that was down. They came out with the intention of beating the snot out of that team, and it's exactly what they did.
I have a good idea on why that is.
Okay.
And I think that leads right from the man in charge. That's Bill.
Yeah.
And Bill they trust. And they
Yeah.
know that if they don't perform
Right.
and if they don't produce, it's going to be a long week of practice.
Well, I think Jonas Gray has something that he can say about that.
Yep.
Ran for 200 yards last year against the Colts, and we basically never
See
saw
you later.
him. Never saw him
Yeah,
again.
never
and
saw
he was
him.
cut.
Yep. Goodbye. Have fun in Miami.
Have fun in Miami.
Yeah.
Enjoy
Sounds like
Miami.
it's being a great time over there. Okay, we just talked about Jonas Gray. We know he's no longer a player that's of importance to the Patriots anymore.
Given
He's
that he's
Miami's
on,
property.
Given that he's on another team.
Absolutely. So that means another person obviously has stepped in
Yep.
and has been, I don't think anything short of dazzling on what he's been able to do from coming out of nowhere. That's Dion Lewis.
Literally out of nowewhere. Had you ever heard of Deion
No.
Lewis before?
No.
I've never heard of him before.
And this was a signing that they had last year, and he was picked up from some independent
Yeah, and he
league,
was
something
cut
like
by the
that.
Colts
He was
initially,
hurt.
actually.
Yeah, I think he was hurt,
Yeah.
I can't get over his skill set on how good he is in pockets and how good he
Yeah.
is at moving around and getting the extra yardage and just motoring down the field. He looks like a seasoned veteran out there.
His touchdown catch over the weekend where he went through like 4 guys.
Oh, that was
ducked under
very
the one
pretty.
guy and everything. You're like, who does that anymore?
Yeah.
Deion Lewis has been a complete surprise.
It's like an episode of Duck Duck Goose out there on the field.
A friend of mine, has LeGarrette Blount in his fantasy team, just assuming he was going to be the starting running back for the Patriots. And we got to game 1, and Deion Lewis is in there. We're like, who is that?
Right. Right.
And he's been amazing. Really, I think they probably project him as eventually being that third down back kind of guy. It's the kind of skill set he seems to have, that Kevin Falk, Shane Vereen type of player, which is fine, which is great. The Patriots offense has always relied on that kind of player. But the way they're playing him like a third down back, but in first and second down also.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. I think if he has one flaw in his game at this point, it is in pass blocking. He doesn't get a good hard chip on the pass rushers generally, and we saw some of that on Sunday a little bit, where both Solder and he kind of got messed up by Hardy a bit there. So he's
that's definitely a work in progress.
But it's a work in progress, and what you're getting for the money you're paying him is great.
Well, they just signed him to another whopping 2-year deal, so he'll be around for a little bit. Now, what does that mean for Blount? That's a great thing that you just brought up. Yes, Blount was projected to start that first week. Nobody saw him.
To me,
or second week, because he was suspended the first week.
Being a skills player on the Patriots, a running back, a wide receiver, even a tight end, except for Gronk, you never count on being the starter, number one. And number two, being the starter doesn't really mean anything because they put guys in and out. And even on the offensive line this year, they've been doing that. Guys in and out so much.
A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. And so, I think Blount is still a valuable part of this team. I mean, he still rushed for 75-something yards. Granted, most of it was one rush, but he rushed for 75-something yards in that game on Sunday, and he's still a valuable part. And he has a skill set that's different from Lewis's. Lewis's is that catch the ball, run around, be sneaky, that kind of thing. Speed guy. Blount is drive straight ahead and plow guys over.
Through.
If you need 7 yards, you go with Deion Lewis. If you need 1, you go with if you want 1, you go with Brady. You need 2, you go with Blount. In a goal line situation, Blount is your guy.
He is.
He also doesn't fumble. That's the other thing that
he
Lewis
doesn't.
has fumbled a couple of times.
He has fumbled a few times.
He hasn't the last few weeks, so hopefully he's worked that out.
That's one of the more underrated things about Blount is his ball control is spectacular.
He doesn't fumble the ball, and of course anybody who fumbles the ball goes into Bill Belichick's doghouse pretty quickly.
Unless you're Deion Lewis. Amazingly against the Bills.
I was shocked.
The Bills?
It was the Bills.
That's
I was shocked when he came back in that game.
I was shocked too. Because
generally you fumble and you're done.
They didn't really use Blount much in that game. He didn't really start getting in until the Jacksonville game. He really didn't. And that's when people are like, oh, I guess I should pick him up in fantasy and play him.
I mean, this is the classic Patriots thing, though, is you have we'll call him the quote-unquote skill back, and then you have the bruiser back, and you use, depending on the situation, you use the different guy.
It's good to mix it up because then it sets up teams with not knowing really who's coming in and what's going on. It's a great asset to have, and I hope they utilize it more.
And Blount is pretty good in the pass blocking.
Yes, he is.
Also, so you can utilize Blount for those run up the middle
plays. You may
plays.
see him have a very sneaky good game on Sunday.
Oh, well, I don't think it's sneaky at all.
You don't think it's sneaky at all? Okay.
I don't think it's sneaky at all. I mean, I don't know if we're at the Colts game yet, but if you remember the Colts game last year, that was the one where Jonas Gray put up 200 yards against him, and the Patriots basically did the same thing in the playoff game.
Right, that was Blount.
It was Blount, but they basically just ran the ball, and I think you're going to see more of the same again this Sunday.
Yeah, I do think you'll see more of the same on that. We're almost at the Colts, but
I think both Lewis and Blount have big games.
Big games, no doubt. Maybe not so much on Edelman and Gronk. You're going to see more of the Lewis and Blount factor, I would think. One of the things that's been I think probably the biggest factor on why this season has really gone so well outside of Tom Brady is Stephen Gostkowski. He needs his segment right now because he set a record on Sunday of 57 yards for a field goal.
Longest field goal in Patriots history.
Longest field goal.
It's tied with one with Vinatieri. Vinatieri had a 57-yarder also. Yeah.
It's amazing how still underrated he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's the top scorer in the league, has been for the last several years. That means he scores the most points in the league. People don't realize, sometimes people forget that kickers always have the highest scores. Because every touchdown, they get a point,
That's true.
And they have all the field goals and all that. But he has been so consistent, and we talked about this actually in a different show that actually got cut. We can talk about it again. It's on the editing room floor.
It is.
But the fact that when Vinatieri left, the fact that they replaced him with someone who in some ways is better than Vinatieri was in a lot of ways. Certainly at that point, and at this point in his career, Gostkowski is a better kicker now than Vinatieri is.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the signature moments that Vinatieri had.
Not yet.
Not yet. Winning Super Bowls with a kick and that kind of thing, the Snow Bowl game and that kind of thing. But Gostkowski is so consistent that he is. The Patriots have a great thing they can do there. They can have a lot of consistency at kicking, and they can live with a 50 or 60-yard drive and go for a 40-yard field goal, and they know they're going to get it.
I think more people have realized this year how valuable he is.
Well, the kicking has been horrible this year. In the
by
NFL.
looking at the putrid, disgraceful kicking that's been around the NFL with extra points.
Yeah,
yes, it's been backed up a little bit.
And not just extra points, it's field goal misses too.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable.
There have been
this year.
half a dozen games that have been lost because of field goals.
Yep.
Or missed field goals, and that's almost unheard of at this point in the season. And I'm not sure why we've devalued the kicker. You'd think that in some ways getting kickers would be easier with the popularity of youth soccer.
Right.
It used to be soccer players made the best kickers, and with popularity of youth soccer, you'd think we'd be growing NFL kickers like crazy.
You would think
in this country. But
I know one of the things that was being of debate a little bit was the price tag on kickers going up as we continue here in the NFL. I think the owners are probably going to get a little bit hesitant and shy towards putting out the big bucks for a specific kicker. That right there, in my opinion, is going to separate your high-quality teams at the top and then your low-seeded teams right at the bottom. Mm-hmm. I think that if you don't have a good kicker anymore in your NFL team, you're done.
And quite honestly, let's look at Pittsburgh. We talked about Pittsburgh before.
Great example.
How different does that Pittsburgh team look if they didn't have those 2 missed field goals from Josh Scobie in that game?
Probably suddenly, 2 more wins, maybe.
They're 3-2, and it's a very different looking season at this point.
Yep.
And that's just one game, and so
scary to think about that first game of the year when they faced the Steelers. They had a good kicker. Could have lost that game.
Could have lost that game.
Sure could have.
It's a very different looking season right now, and it all came down to a kicker. I know football players don't like to talk about kickers as being football players, but they're so important to a team.
They are extremely important.
What is the team that carries 3? I think it's the Colts carries 3 kickers, don't they? They carry the.
I think they do
the
because
kickoff
they
guy. They carry Vinatieri for the field goals, and they carry punter. They carry 3 kickers.
They do.
It's because
it's good to have the backup because Vinatieri is a little older.
Yeah, Vinatieri doesn't have the leg to put it in the end zone as much anymore, and so but he's still very accurate for the field goals, and so they carry 3 kickers.
It's true. Very true. Moving to the injury update.
Something Belichick would never do.
No, that's true.
Belichick would never carry.
Absolutely not. He needs that 53rd player or whatever it was as some valuable asset to his team. Speaking of the injury side, we talked about Nate Soldier at the beginning here in the show, and unfortunately we have news to pass out that he is out for the season with a torn bicep.
Torn bicep muscle.
By Greg Hardy?
Possibly, probably. I mean, that's who he was up facing, in the Dallas game. He went down about halfway through the Dallas game. We just assumed he was benched because he was playing badly.
Well, watching that game, it looked like his performance was terrible.
Yeah,
and that's why he came out. And we thought it was a performance thing.
Yeah, so maybe, when he was injured, though, hard to think of a lineman being affected as much by a bicep muscle. It's not like he's catching the ball or throwing the ball.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is if you watch how linemen work, it's all about, I used to be a lineman, it's all about using your hands and your arms and hand blocking, that kind of thing. If you have a torn bicep, you can't do the job.
You can't.
Can't do the job.
Can't.
You can do it with a broken hand. You see them all the time.
Yep.
They'll break their hand into their arm and they'll just put it in a massive cast and they'll still play, but you can't do it with a torn bicep.
No, you can't. So on that note, can they get through that injury without him?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, Solder is a good offensive lineman. He's not a great offensive lineman.
Yep.
And so I think there are options for the Patriots. One of the advantages we talked about it a minute or two ago is that it's not as though they've been playing with the same 5 guys on offensive line every play for the whole season. Mm-hmm. Whether it's by design or still part of a extended preseason thing, they have been filtering in different offensive linemen here and there all over the place. So even though Marcus Cannon and some of these guys who are going to come in have played a fair number of snaps this season. It's not as though they're cold.
They have the experience.
They have the experience, and so I think that it is Brady's blind side, which is there has to be a level of comfort there. But I think it's not going to be as bad as some people are thinking.
Right.
I think people get caught up in the fact that he's the starter. And we just said being a starter on the Patriots is not necessarily, apart from a few guys, it doesn't mean a whole lot on the offense because they trade guys in and out so much.
Yep.
So I don't think it's going to be as bad as it could be.
That's what I'm thinking too. And I think the reason why I'm thinking the same way is because last year was the year when we had a lot of moving parts too on that offensive and defensive line, shifting in and out from injury or performance.
Yep.
And I think that because of that rotation that was there, there's more of a comfort level with knowing if somebody does go down, there's somebody that can step right in and do the job fine.
And the whole Patriots mantra all the time is do your job, know your job, and do your job.
Yeah.
And I think that carries through in the offensive line as much as it does anyplace else.
I totally do.
I mean, we've seen that at the center position. Brian Stork was a rookie last year, played decently.
Yep.
Injured this year. They have who's the guy playing center now? I don't remember the top, but he's a rookie this year. He's actually better than Stork. Yeah. He's doing great, and he's a rookie. And they made a big deal in the preseason about how Brady going to do with a center who's never played before, and it's Brady's putting together his best season ever.
He's been fine. I think it's time to talk about those Colts. They need some time in the spotlight here,
Colts.
Or maybe not so much spotlight. I think we just want to knock them down a little bit. What do we think will happen in this game on Sunday? Do we think it's going to be what we predict?
I think the Patriots are more motivated for this game than they were for the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, they've come out and they've said, it's just another game.
Yeah,
they're lying.
They're lying. Yeah. They're lying, and that's what they do. I mean, they don't let people publicly get under their
That's
skin.
why they've been so good, dominant from what they've done.
Right, but I think they're pretty motivated for this game. Obviously, the whole Deflategate thing came from the Colts and the Ravens, but primarily from the Colts. And the Colts are the ones that have really carried this torch.
Yeah, they have.
If you watch it, I don't know about the Colts themselves, but certainly the Indianapolis media has continued to carry this Deflategate torch. And I think, I honestly, and I don't say this too often because I tend to be a negative New England sports fan who always thinks we're going to lose. I really think the Patriots are just going to come in and blow them away.
Yeah,
I really do. Now, we'll see if Andrew Luck plays. That could be a part of it.
Does that even matter, though, if you think about it?
It might not. It might not. Andrew Luck has been pretty much owned by Bill Belichick over the years and has not had particularly good numbers. What have they played? 5 or 6 times or something like that, including the playoffs. And, as always, and they always say this, and this is what you're going to hear from your Sunday morning analysis. So you can see it from me now. You don't have to watch Sunday morning. And it all comes down to, are they able to pressure Brady? If they can pressure Brady, he'll crumble. Pressure Brady up the center. That's what they always say.
Dallas tried.
Pops
right back in and gets the job done.
And they got the job done. So it really comes down to, of course, can the Colts pressure Brady? I don't think they can. I don't think they have the defensive chops to play with the Patriots.
I think we should be in the 50 range for this game.
Oh,
I don't want to be too bold with it, but there is much hatred for this team. And I think this game was circled early on the calendar and said, just what the Patriots do. Do your job.
And this goes back, when Manning was playing for the Colts, I always wanted to beat the Colts because of Manning, but I didn't hate them. I just thought this is a good quality team. We want to beat the Colts, and it was a pretty good rivalry.
Yep.
Though the Patriots won most often, the Colts certainly had a couple signature wins in there.
Yeah, they did.
That made it a really good, strong rivalry.
Yep.
And you appreciated it. But since in the Luck years, since Manning has left, it seems as though the Colts go out of their way to poke the bear, so to speak. Whether it's piping extra crowd noise into the stadium, or it's the deflate thing, or whatever it is. It just seems as though they know the Patriots have their number and they're just annoyed with it.
Yep.
And because of that, they kind of make a bigger deal out of it, and they always do something.
I want to ask you this question about their quarterback. That's Andrew Luck. Mm-hmm. We know his performance has been terrible against the Patriots. Just hasn't been where it should be if you're a Colts fan. But let's think about his performance in general. He's been in the league 4 years now.
Yeah.
A lot of hype over this guy, thinking he's going to be the next Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or whoever it's going to be. Or Peyton Manning. Yeah, absolutely. Are we off with saying that he's a superstar quarterback in this league?
I don't think so. I think he is.
I think he is?
I think of his class, his draft class, you're talking, or his contemporaries, let's put it that way.
Yep.
The guys who came into the league in the few years around him. You're talking about RG3. You're talking about Russell Wilson. You're talking about Andrew Luck, and I'm trying to think of a couple
out of that
others.
group. I would totally say
he's the best one of that group, and that's the kind of that they were heralding. This is the next generation, of quarterbacks, And of that group, he's the best of them, really. I mean, Russell Wilson has had success. I don't take that away from him. But if I had to choose a quarterback and my choices were Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck.
Oh, I would totally
say that. I would take Andrew Luck. So not to take anything away from Wilson. His success has been genuine. But he's
I would take something
really
away
good
from
team,
Wilson.
Though. He's been with a really good team.
I think that his performance is strictly team-driven.
Okay.
I think he wins because he has a good defense. I think he wins because he has Marshawn Lynch or has certain weapons to get the job done. I am making the bold statement here and saying he's the most overrated player in the NFL.
Wow. More overrated than, okay.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
RG3.
Well, playing-wise right now. Right. I would say the one that's in there each week, in and out, and he's still their starting quarterback is Russell Wilson.
The other one
all you heard about was, he's so dynamic with his running game, and he's a great passer in this. Well, you know what? I don't particularly like Russell Wilson.
The other quarterback that's in that group is Colin Kaepernick. That's the other one.
Colin Kaepernick, that's right.
They all came
There's
in the league.
Another one that's on the overrated list, too.
Cam Newton, another one. But they all came in the league about the same time. And to me, if I had to choose any of those guys, those 5 or 6 guys, I would choose Andrew Luck as my quarterback. He's the most... he's the best pocket passer. He does have some mobility, not as much as some of those other guys do, but he does have some. And I think he's just got the best football sense.
Yeah, I definitely see the sense.
So I don't think he's a disappointment at all. I think in some ways he was too successful too early. I think he would have benefited from a really bad losing season to focus him. Peyton Manning had it. Peyton Manning went, 2-15 or 2-14 or something like that in his first season. And I think it helped teach Peyton Manning something. Drew Brees had it. Brady never really had it, but
and never will have it.
but I mean, a lot of quarterbacks. Well, these highly touted quarterbacks, these number 1 picks, and that kind of thing is where I'm going. Is sometimes they need to have that losing season to remind them how much work it takes to get there. Brady didn't need that because he was not a number 1 pick. He was a number 6. He was in the 6th round.
He always was at the bottom.
He was always at the bottom. He didn't even start half the time at Michigan. You didn't have to teach him that he had to work harder than everybody else. Sometimes I think the number 1 picks, these highly touted guys who may have a lot of talent, and they'll oftentimes do, come out of, they won every game in college. They come to the pros, and if they like a Russell Wilson, maybe have success because the team is really good around him. They forget that it takes a lot of work.
You're talking about Tim Tebow?
Tim Tebow's another one. Tim Tebow was absolutely another one. I think he's got all the talent in the world. I really do. I don't think he works hard at it. He's also got an ego on him, and I understand that I'm saying this as I'm a Tim Tebow fan. I like a lot about Tim Tebow, and I know a lot of people. Very
surprised that the team hasn't picked him up yet.
A lot of people don't like the way he's so verbal about his faith and all that kind of thing, but I appreciate that personally. But as a football player, I feel as though he's a little arrogant because he thinks he can just come in and do it. I don't think he works as hard as others do. The other thing is he was offered the opportunity to play other positions and didn't want to do it. And look at Julian Edelman, for instance, who was a quarterback in college, who was given the opportunity to play in the NFL as a wide receiver, and he said, absolutely, one of the best receivers in the NFL, even though they don't give him the credit he deserves. But when you look at the stats at the end of the season, one of the best receivers in the NFL, Tebow could have been that guy. He could be
totally
that guy.
Could be something like that. That's a great point. Great point. Well, we hope that the game is as hyped and as high scoring as possible. Maybe they'll reach 60. We'll see. It's possible.
So do you have a score prediction for Sunday?
I'm high 50s. I like the number 56.
Both 56 to what?
56 to, I'm going to say 56 to 10.
56-10.
Yeah.
Okay.
56-10.
All right. I'm going 32-21.
32-21.
32-21.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
Even keel right
there. A
little bit more. I just think they are public enemy number 1, and they just want to come in and just say, and they actually want to deflate their own football out there, and then they can have their own riot act after that from that.
Right.
Now, around the other NFL for news, there's a lot of things that have been going on with other teams too, not just the Colts and the Patriots and other teams we've talked about. There's a lot of injuries. And one of the bigger injuries that just happened this past week now comes from Jamal Charles on the Kansas City Chiefs. So, for whatever reason it is this year, we were talking about this off air, is this the year of the injury?
I don't think there are more than there are in a typical season.
Okay.
I just think there are a couple bigger names than we're used to
I like
seeing.
that point, yep.
And some of it is fluky kind of stuff. If you look at Charles's injury, it's not like he got hit or anything like that. He basically slipped on the turf.
Yep.
And that's unfortunate. But I mean, if it did happen to us when Brady went down, in 2008, teams have to learn to play through that kind of thing, and a lot of teams aren't built to be able to play through it. If you remember that year, the Patriots went 11-5 without Brady, didn't make the playoffs, which is, but anyway, crazy. But they went 11-5. They were built to still be able to play. Could they play today without Brady if we had to bring in Garoppolo for half a season? That might be scary, but
I don't want to take that chance.
But we've seen a number of high-profile injuries. You've seen Drew Brees out a couple games. We already talked about Tony Romo. Andrew Luck is another one. Ben Roethlisberger has been out. Marshawn Lynch has been out. I mean, there's been a number of big names that we've seen go down to injury. Some of them serious, some of them not. Now they're talking about possibly Julio Jones having an injury also. I mean, but none of them are really the Charleses, but a lot of them aren't the big season-ending injuries. It's the pulled muscles and that kind of thing. And I think probably
most come back towards
back.
The middle point in the season or something along those lines.
And sometimes at this part of the season, teams are willing to give a guy a game or two off because they think they can ride it out. Even if it's not as bad an injury, they'd rather give him the rest on game 2 and 3.
Give it now, then he can get it
so that he can
going
get
towards
to totally
when it really
heal
matters.
When it really matters, So
here's a good question for you. Which team with one of the players that's injured or players that are injured is going to hurt the most from that player or players being out?
It depends on the length of the injury, but I think Dallas Cowboys is pretty obvious.
The Cowboys? Okay.
Yeah, the dual combination of Romo and Des Bryant in particular. Those
you think
two,
that hurts the most?
I think that hurts the most. Those are basically their two best players, Jason Witten being another one. Maybe the two best offensive players. Or two of their best offensive players, and important ones. And it's the length of the injury there also. Already we're saying that probably Luck will be back this week. Drew Brees has already come back.
Yep.
Roethlisberger may not be back in the next week or two. But Romo was out to midseason at least. Game 11, I think they're saying. And so that's a tough one to overcome when, basically they traded for their backup quarterback.
Yep.
Castle, who's playing this week. They didn't have anybody there. It took Castle a couple weeks to learn the offense. He's only been in the offense a couple weeks, and he's their starting quarterback this week.
Right.
He's an average quarterback at best. Castle is, but only being in the system for a couple weeks is going to hurt him.
Yeah, well, because he's not going to know everything like he's supposed to.
So I say Dallas. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I think Dallas is also going to be the team that's probably going to be on the outside looking in. I do. Even after Romo said to Brady, "I'll see you in February."
Yeah, right. Which I thought was a great line.
Yeah, Brady was like, "Yeah, all right, buddy." I think that if Luck is out for an extended amount of time, see, I don't even think the Colts are a playoff team.
Okay.
Even with Andrew Luck.
Really? Okay.
There, I think that their age is too high. They have Andre Johnson and they got Vinatieri and
Matt Hasselbeck
is their 40-something-year-old quarterback playing right now.
Right.
I just don't think this is the year for the Colts. I think that they're just going to be on the outside again, looking in. I think Pittsburgh's going to be okay. I think with Michael Vick that's in there,
He's
been
been
okay.
He's been okay.
I think that's been better than expected with anything.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens' loss with Terrell Suggs is one of the most underrated ones of the season.
Yeah.
The Suggs injury has been a killer because that defense was what won games for the Ravens.
Yeah, the Ravens' defense is a pale
it is
shadow
not
of what it used to be. And Suggs was like the last guy from that dominant group with Ray Allen and who was the defensive back, Ed Reed.
Yeah.
Suggs is the last guy from that dominant group.
Yeah, Lewis and Reed was
he set the
dominant.
He was setting the tone for that defensive group, and they have been not what they used to be without Suggs.
We have some 5-0 teams or 4-0 teams that are in the NFL,
undefeated
we'll say, so far in the NFL. As you said off air, it is the most undefeated teams that the NFL has had for this extended amount of time so far. Our teams include the Broncos, the Patriots, the Panthers, the Bengals, and amazingly the Atlanta Falcons.
The Atlanta Falcons.
Which one of those in there is
Loses
the biggest
this week.
surprise? Is it probably the one I just said at the end?
I would say the Falcons are obviously the biggest surprise.
Okay.
Because you just don't expect anything of them. They've always had quality skill players, but they just can't seem to put it together. Really, this year, it's the defense that has bucked them up this year. And you even saw that. Their win last weekend was a defensive touchdown in overtime. So, I mean, do they win that game anyway? There's no way to know, but certainly the defensive touchdown is what won them the game. So I say absolutely the Falcons are the surprise.
See, now, I challenge you with the Falcons on that. I think the defense has been good, but I think there is one particular player that has been far and away probably one of the studs of the NFL so far. That's Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman's been outstanding.
Atlanta finally has a running back after all these years.
They've been trying.
Do you remember it was
Michael Evans?
No, not Michael Evans. It was Michael Turner.
Oh, Michael Turner,
came
right.
in, and he was there for a little bit, but he got hurt and just wasn't there.
You can't
Steven Jackson came in and wasn't there doing much.
The Falcons have been trying to establish a running game
They
for
have,
years.
and I think
because
they
keep
finally
bringing in
have
these guys. And Devontae Freeman has been amazing.
I think that right there, he's been their spark. And I think getting him there assessed with Julio Jones and who's their other receiver that they have that's very good?
Roddy White.
Roddy White's no, there's another guy. Forget what his name is.
I don't know.
One of those other guys too that's in there as a receiver has just been so good.
And we've seen
it gives them such a skill set now.
Yeah, we've seen
Roddy White's your third receiver.
And you've seen how many times, obviously, we say it time and time again, how much a running game helps a quarterback.
Yeah.
And, Matt Ryan is a solid quarterback, not great. Again, kind of like Nate Solder. Yeah. Not great, but good.
Good
He's
enough.
a good quarterback, but the running game makes all the difference. If you don't have to pass the ball 40 times a game to win, it makes a huge difference. If you can pass the ball 25 times a game and win, you can make 25, quality passing plays as opposed to 25 good ones and 15 crummy ones and hope you hit on a couple of them and win the game. So, Matt Ryan has been much better this season because of the quality running game.
I will say, and I'll make a bold statement on this one again, too. I have a lot of bold statements today. I think Atlanta will be the surpriser of the surprising team for many when this playoff run comes.
Could be.
I think this year, for some reason, has Atlanta in the mix. Don't be surprised to see Atlanta Patriots Super Bowl. I do think that we have the advantage of that.
There we have it. The Nick Face prediction.
Yeah.
Atlanta, New England.
Atlanta, New England. I don't know if a lot of people
Atlanta
will think
beating
that.
Green Bay?
With what I see right now, from what they have with this Freeman guy, and they have Jones and all these tools that I think, you know what? I think they could get past them.
Okay.
I haven't been extremely impressed with Green Bay.
All right.
Green Bay's good. And I think that they've been a top 3 team at least.
Yeah.
But they're missing a big player on their offense, and that's Jordy Nelson. That's a huge loss that you got to come through.
Yeah, that's true.
James Jones has come through very well for them, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Rodgers and Nelson's
and
compatibility on the field. Rodgers would throw down the field to Rodgers. He'd be there when you need him.
Yeah.
He's not there when you need him.
And I think they've also Eddie Lacy has not been what he has been in the past for them. The other guy Matthews is kind of picking up the slack for him a little bit. In fact, he has more yards than Eddie Lacy does this season thus far. Eddie Lacy has not been the same guy, and I'm not exactly sure why. I haven't heard about any reason why that is. He just for whatever reason hasn't been the same guy.
It is weird. It's well, I think what we see from the NFL for a long time is that running back, you're not that great for the longest of time. You may get 2, 3, 4 years out of it.
Adrian Peterson being the exception.
On that. And then you just, for some reason, you
well,
maybe lose a step.
I mean,
maybe lost a step.
Running backs take an awful lot of punishment. They take more punishment really than any other player on the field.
Yeah, they do.
And so it's and a lot of that punishment is in their legs, which is where they make their money. So that's part of it. Really, a running back past the age of 32 is pretty much done.
Yeah.
In terms of being the spark for a team, they can be a fine backup guy and that kind of thing. We're seeing who is it this year? Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson
for the Cardinals came out of nowhere.
Coming out of nowhere,
just doing amazing.
So you absolutely can be that guy for a little while, but we do see that running backs take an awful lot of punishment.
They do.
I mean, watch a running play up the middle or just to the left or right side of the line, and look at how many guys hit the running back before he goes down. And it is a tough position to play.
Tough, ground and pound, and they get beat up, dinged up, all different ways of just not being what you expect them when they're young and rookies, and performing like a Deion Lewis type. So hopefully that doesn't happen to him. Yeah. Well, on a whole, I think we say the Patriots will win against the Colts upcoming.
I think so.
And let's hope that we keep not having big injuries and just continue to chug along, and maybe we do have that perfect season.
Right. Well,
I almost wouldn't want to be perfect.
as I said last episode, I'm going to hold with 13-3. 13-3 is my Patriots prediction for this year. Yeah.
14-2. You heard it from me right
Okay,
here.
there we go.
I'll go a little different. Kevin, thank you for joining
All
us
right,
today
thanks for
on
having
the
me, Nick.
football show.
On the football show. Face the footballs.
Face the footballs. Hopefully they don't get deflated this upcoming
right.
weekend. We will see you soon. We hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the upcoming Patriots game. We will see you again. Bye-bye.